All right. Welcome, everybody.
We're back.
Hopefully,
Reconstruction Part 2.
Oh, yes.
Okay, it's not Part 2 for you. It's Part 2 for us.
Yeah, definitely. We had a little snafu the first time
technical
we did it. So let's do a little recap. We've been gone a little bit, and I know that things kind of got in the way, and life happened.
Life happens.
Mm-hmm.
School happens.
Yeah,
that happened. Woo. School and soccer.
Yeah, but we know now. 1865. Well, 1864.
Really, yeah. The end of the war. It's fairly obvious by fall of 1864 it's over.
Right.
The South is just trying to hang on. Maybe trying to play for a draw. I don't know.
Because there is the possibility of maybe a peace treaty, but really, no one would agree to have a peace treaty with the South. There's just no way.
Well, I mean, Lincoln's stated war aim was to restore the Union.
Yeah.
So he was winning. So there's no way he's going to agree.
No
to
way.
Anything like that.
Well, and again, he again is the first American president to really fight a war through his full first term.
Well, yeah, I mean, the war started in April. He was sworn in March of 1861. Right. And, technically, as we talked about, the war started in December of 1860 with the first secession of South Carolina.
Right.
But that was considered a false start, and we moved back 5 yards and started over again.
Yep.
But, here at this end of this war, this gruesome bloodbath, that we're looking at, the normal number's always been 600,000.
That's what I was always taught, yeah.
But I read this new article, and they're talking that it might be 750 to 800,000, which is an order of, that's a big jump.
Well, and when you're going over 100 to 150,000 more, that's a lot. That's the population of many
large
substantial cities.
Yeah, at that time it would be one of the biggest cities on the continent.
Right.
And then you see the demographic, of course, because this damage isn't shared throughout the age ranges. It's concentrated in the 18 to 40 zone, really in the 20s, the mid-20s zone. This article that I had read, I wish I had it right with me. I did last time, and then, technical difficulties.
Yeah.
It talks about the fact that in certain of these demographics, like 21 to 24, during the war, in certain states in the South, most of the Deep South, they lost a quarter of their young men. That's a huge damage that to a society, not just to your war aims, but to your society as a whole. Things have to change when you lose that many people.
Exactly. You have populations in some of these small towns, especially in the Deep South, who they literally have no fathering men.
Right, they have to go and visit cousins and things in other cities.
Right.
To find people who are
of marrying age,
with of course always that defensive concept that you don't want the plantation or the farm to leave the family.
Right.
So you've got to be very careful about who your daughter marries, because your sons are all dead and her fiance got killed at Gettysburg. And
right.
You've got all this going on. And, of course, the devastation of the South. Sherman's March is just one small aspect of it, as brutal as it was. But when you look at the Anaconda Plan that strangled their economy, when you look at the Confederate Army of early 1865, you're looking at a barely functional early industrial army. They're running out of boots. We saw that at Gettysburg.
Right.
That's in 1863.
Right.
Uniforms become very haphazard because they're just getting what they can. Food is becoming very hard, which is why they're eating goober peas all the time instead of as a bonus of protein to their diet.
Well, and you got to think about it this way too. Whenever they go through a town, whether it be southern or northern, they are taking anything and everything they can.
They're locusts.
They are.
Which means, of course, especially in those border states, they start being the bad guy.
Right.
Even the pro-slavery people don't really like it when their cupboard is bare and all their canned or jarred goods. Mm-hmm. They call it canning, but it's always in jars.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Tomato.
But, all of a sudden they just took all your food. And now you don't have anything.
And then winter comes.
So you're waiting for a harvest now, and you're on the same kind of rations the Army is, and you don't appreciate it because you're not part of the Army.
No.
You
never want to be, never have been.
And your women folk were doing it too.
Exactly.
And your children. Your little kids are suffering. So the South is just getting ready to collapse economically. Even if Lee didn't surrender at Appomattox in April, I can't imagine they would have survived the summer. They just didn't have any armies left.
Right. And again, it takes a lot to amass an army. It takes a lot to feed an army. It takes a lot to supply an army. So why would you want to continue when you understood, hey, we're done?
We're done. And the guys across from you are wearing, same color uniforms all the time.
Right.
They have now repeating carbines, Gatling guns, ironclads. You built one, they've got 5.
Right.
So the war ends with the South in a shambles. Economically, socially, population-wise, it's just a big dent in who they are.
Which is a great segue into what we really want to focus on today in the idea of Reconstruction. The Reconstruction plans.
How does Lincoln get these guys back in?
Right.
What's his plan?
His plan, of course, is very lenient. His plan is a leniency of what many historians call the 10% plan, where if 10% of the voting population in 1860 were to swear this oath of loyalty, which again, many of them cross their fingers, cross their arms, cross their feet, toes, everything, cross their eyes, they did everything they could in order to make it look, oh yes, I'm swearing this oath of loyalty to the United States, and I swear I never would put you in danger again.
I'm really, really super sorry.
Yeah. Words are
But, his goal really is to have the Union back by the end of the decade.
Yeah.
All the states would be back into the Union. The 13th Amendment would be passed.
Yes.
Banning slavery, but probably not the 14th and 15th. But maybe. Maybe the 14th.
If they were lucky. The 14th, possibly, because there's a lot of loopholes around it.
Yes.
And we see that later on, even when we talk later today about this. But giving citizenship to blacks, it was a huge thing. I mean, we talked about that with the prelude to the war when we talked about the Dred Scott v. Sanford case, where again this black man thought that he was a free man, sued for his freedom. Then Tawney said, "No, you're not even a person."
Right. So how can you be a free person?
Yeah. So the understanding is,
yeah,
it might have passed, it might not have, but of course.
I think it would have had to have passed because the radical Republicans in Congress...
They wouldn't have... Yeah.
I don't think they would have allowed it not to pass because what's the point of freeing them from slavery if they still aren't citizens?
True.
Then we'd have this weird middle ground, which is really what we end up after Reconstruction, but we'll get
there. We'll get there. But then again, you got to realize, again, we talked about this at the beginning. What Lincoln's plan was is to reunite the Union.
He's all about mercy and grace, really.
Right.
I mean, that is his goal.
It does have some. It has some problems, though.
It has some problems. The crossing of your fingers.
Yes.
If you're going to live in a country that you've lost the war, so if you're living, say, in Virginia, one of the last states to secede.
True.
So you know that going back to the federal government isn't necessarily going to be as bad as it would be, say, in Alabama.
Oh, right.
As far as the sentiment. So finding 10% of the people shouldn't be very difficult. No. But once you find that 10% and you're back in the Union, that doesn't mean you're electing, Northern-type Democrats.
No. Mm-mm.
You're going to elect people that represent your values, and you're going to try to keep blacks from having any say in it because they're still mad about this whole slavery thing.
Oh, yes.
And it's just, very recent. Some of them are still camped out on those plantations because they have nowhere else to go.
Yeah, with the Emancipation Proclamation and then, of course, the end of the war, we don't have a way of these people just, hey, here you go.
Right, you don't just suddenly take a caravan down to Mexico and apply for citizenship. No. It's not going to happen.
No.
And so you know, Lincoln's plan is there, and you know he has the, he has the votes.
Right.
Even the radical Republicans aren't going to overcome Lincoln's plan, because when push comes to shove, if they run against Lincoln, they'll probably start to lose. You might see a big split in the Republican Party between the radicals and the moderates.
Right.
But it would have been based on his personality, I think. People would have followed him. But John Wilkes Booth makes sure we don't have to talk about that too much.
Oh, yes. Unfortunately, John Wilkes Booth and his conspirators.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
You know,
I was well out of high school before I ever learned there was a conspiracy.
And that's the thing, you know, when you only hit the high points in your history classes, you don't get into the details, and we're not going to get too much into the details of it, but we are going to kind of just give you the basics here. Of course, John Wilkes Booth, he's the guy. He's the actor, the main
he's
the
a
main
star.
martyr, if you will.
He's a Matt Damon.
Oh,
I mean, people know him on both sides of the border.
Yes, he is
a star.
the guy. You know, he's a regular at Ford's Theater.
Yes,
he knows what's going on. He's very well known in Washington D.C. What people don't realize is that he's a staunch Southern supporter.
Yes.
Now, before the assassination in April of '65, there were actually 3 attempts to either A, kidnap the president, or B, kill the president. So
that sounds like a movie.
Yeah, right?
Kidnapping the president?
Yeah. Air Force One.
White House Down.
Any of them. But here again is the situation, you know, again, what Booth and his conspirators, you know, George Harold and David Azerrod and all these other individuals, they were wanting to disrupt. They were wanting to completely sever the American government, which again is very surprising. You have this happen April 14, 1865, just a week, not even a week.
After Appomattox?
After Appomattox. You know, Appomattox was April 9.
Less than a month after he was sworn in for a second term.
Exactly.
Where he's made it pretty clear that he's going to be pretty merciful.
Right. And even in his second inaugural address, he said, this war is over.
Right.
In March of '65, he said, the war is over. It's time for this nation to rebuild and come together, you know, and
reform the bands of brotherhood or something.
Something
I can't
along
remember
those
the phrasing.
lines. But again, Booth, unfortunately, he's just your normal
radical.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a good one.
He's angry that the South has lost.
Yes, he is. He felt like they could have done more to, I don't know, refute the northern attack, but it doesn't work. It doesn't.
It sounds very much like a radical who isn't carrying a gun.
Yeah.
And doesn't have to eat just goober peas for 5 days straight.
Right.
And worry about the fact that he doesn't have shoes.
Or the fact that he could get dysentery at any moment in his time in camp and die.
Which, of course, you know, going back to the casualties, that's still 2/3 of the deaths in the Civil War are not because the enemy did anything to you. It's because you caught a bug of some sort.
Sure.
Influenza runs through, I can't remember which year it was, might have been 1864. Runs through both sides pretty badly. And that's weird to us because, you know, the flu, not that big a deal. But when you go basically anything pre-1920s, the flu is something to worry about.
Well, I mean,
especially for the elderly and the young, of course. Sure. But even able-bodied men, or, well, formerly able-bodied men who've been on low rations and are living in squalid conditions like trenches with no shoes, they're going to be very susceptible to it.
Yeah.
But this assassination plot...
the plot, and then, of course, the actual...
The actual result, of course, is just Abraham Lincoln is shot in the head, dies the next day.
Thankfully, they did not... They were not able to fulfill their plan, their conspiracy of taking out Andrew Johnson and the Secretary of State,
Seward.
because of,
well, we wouldn't even got Alaska if he got killed.
No, we wouldn't have. We would not have gotten Alaska.
Maybe.
We probably would have eventually.
Somebody would have bought it.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully before the gold rush, because then the price would have went up.
Yeah, the Russians would have been a little too picky about that. I think they would have strung along with that.
Might not have been Anchorage. Might have been New Moscow.
But the thing is again, when Lincoln dies, so goes with his death the leniency, the fact that the South had a friend after the war.
Well, yeah, with Andrew Johnson, senator from Tennessee,
yes,
being vice president,
right?
Which I think, if that doesn't signal his desire for leniency in the 1864 election, what would?
Right.
That you got rid of Harry Hamlin.
Yes.
And you've moved to a Southern Democrat as your running mate. If that doesn't tell people in the South that you're looking to pass the war,
right? You're
trying to look at a nation reunited.
Yes.
And Andrew Johnson, of course, is southernly sympathetic.
Well,
he's not a pro-Southern. Obviously,
no.
He left his state.
Right.
He was stay in office.
Right. He was the only Southern senator from a seceding state, because of course Kentucky, Missouri, Maryland, they didn't really.
Was Delaware considered a border state?
Technically, yes, but not as much as
who pays attention
right.
To Delaware?
I mean, it's it's the three counties from southern Pennsylvania. I don't think really anyone cares so much. I mean, I'm sorry.
Sorry, they're Delaware.
Yeah,
I know you got a president right now.
I know. It is what it is. But the understanding, of course, is that he's the only white Southern senator to stay in the Union, for that matter.
Well, yeah, definitely in the Senate.
Right, and it does put some bad taste of people's mouths because, he's betrayed them.
He's very free with pardons.
Yes, he is.
So you go into late 1865, early 1866.
Yes.
You establish the Freedmen's Bureau, which is designed to help former slaves establish schools, get them places to live, all those things.
Reunite families. It was a great opportunity, but on the government's dime.
And probably the first ever for the American government,
a social
service program, which I think is important to remember. That this wasn't an FDR thing. This is all the way back to a Lincoln thing.
Oh, I know it. And again, he established the Freedmen's Bureau before his death.
Well, and the VA.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
there you go.
Both of those things are, social programs, technically speaking. And they're designed to help a small group of people rebuild their lives. But you have this huge tension now between the radical Republicans, who are very, very, very angry.
Oh my gosh!
Because first they had to fight a war, and then you shot their president.
Yeah.
And then you have a pro-Southern, I should say, Southern sympathizing president now with Andrew Johnson, and of course the tension is constant.
Yeah.
Trying to get around each other, trying to get things passed or override vetoes, and then finally culminating in an impeachment attempt. Well, an impeachment.
Right.
For sure.
Impeachment charges were brought up against Andrew Johnson. When would that be? It was right around mid 1867. 66, 67, around there. The trial took place in the Senate, of course, like any other impeachment took place in recent history, unfortunately. But we see that Johnson, he is escaping impeachment and conviction by one vote.
Yeah,
one vote.
By the conviction by one vote.
One vote. A person who was in the Senate, he felt like he was a little sympathizing to Johnson's idea, and he's like, you know what? Hey,
despite the radical Republicans' desire for vengeance, the desire to get Johnson out of the way,
right?
A lot of them were still very honest. Honest Abe is called that for a reason.
Yep.
And it attracted many men of the same ilk. And they're not seeing anything that Johnson did that was actually illegal.
Well, because he didn't.
Right.
He did nothing illegal.
He just opposed their plan.
He did. He opposed their plan. He opposed the holdovers from Lincoln's administration, which, of course, I mean, it's the same situation that takes place in many presidents before who had been killed or died while in office. There's multiple examples. But the thing is that Johnson was different. He was different. He was a
Well, he's a Southerner.
he was
I
a
mean,
Southerner.
that'll
And
all
that
you
right
need to
there.
know is right
Mhm.
there. And he's a Democrat in a Republican
controlled.
Well, I mean, he was the
Everything.
only Democrat in the administration before
Yes.
Lincoln dies.
Yes.
I mean, only for a month, but still.
Yeah, but still.
It's still that idea that it's out there.
And so what we see is by 67, Johnson becomes now a very lame duck president. I mean, the term lame duck comes from the understanding that from November of the year of the election till March, the time in which the new president is inaugurated, that president ultimately does have power, but not have power.
Only those powers that don't require the House or the Senate
right
to do. Now, obviously, if you're being seceded by somebody from your own party, it's very likely you can
Yes.
still do things. But most presidents don't have that. You know,
not really.
When you look at the number of presidents that were one term,
yeah,
that they're almost followed. I mean, with our two-party system, you're followed by somebody from the other party, or you're dead.
Right. Let's see. Yeah, there's
that happens 5 times. But,
yep. Yeah. But the thing is now Johnson is forced. He's forced to just rubber stamp whatever the radical Republicans in Congress are putting in front of him.
Yeah, he can fight back, but only on few issues, very few.
So we see now Civil Rights Act of 1867, 1868, the 14th and 15th Amendments passed during the time of Johnson's administration, which of course the 14th gives citizenship to black citizens, and then the 15th gives black males. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, well, because that's the only people who can vote on the white side. Too.
Right. Yes, let's make that clear. It's not until almost another 60 years have passed that we see the 20th Amendment be passed to where women get the right to vote. Or is it the 19th? 19th Amendment. That's correct. 19th.
Because it was 18th is
prohibition.
You can't drink. 19th women can vote. 20th you can drink again.
21st you can drink again.
What's the 20th?
20th I believe is direct election of senators.
I thought that was before. But anyway.
Any route.
I'm going to let you talk about Reconstruction. I'll be right back because we can't pause.
Right. So here again is the other issue that we find as, again, Johnson is forced out, for a lack of better terms. We'll see, again, a large number of these radical Republicans coming in, and they will be showing their fangs, if you will. Again, many of these radical Republicans are saying, let's destroy what the South did and get this sympathizing Southern understanding of, well, we could rise up again, out of the question. Once 1868 comes around, we really see that Johnson is about as electable as, oh gosh, I don't even know, Harry Carey is to play baseball. The idea is that, again, Johnson being a Southerner, being a Democrat, people don't like that, especially what he did when he really brings all those pardons around. And so we see Ulysses S. Grant, war hero, leader of the American forces, well, I should say the federal forces in the last couple of years of the war. He's really making a betterment for the people. He was similar to Eisenhower, if you will, in the 52 election, where Eisenhower really was not one to be a part of politics. Grant was that same way. Didn't really care so much about politics, didn't really care so much about what was going on in party politics, and so he let his cronies, if you will, his Ohio buddies, come in and run his presidency. Again, he's a general. He knows logistics.
He does know how to command a staff, but his style of administration is very laissez-faire.
Right.
I have hired you to be the Secretary of State. Go do Secretary of State stuff.
Right.
Don't bother me with the details. And as far as the South, of course.
Well, by this time also you see, again, you start to have some of these military districts coming up. They split the South into 5 military districts, and of course they put in martial law.
Yes, so you've got Union troops, a lot more than any other peacetime army to this point, for sure. and probably until the Cold War.
Oh, for sure.
This large army, which is something to keep in mind as we head towards Reconstruction's closing.
Yes.
Is that you have a lot of guys in blue,
yep,
far from home,
mm-hmm.
Serving in the army. Which, of course, if it's like most wars, that might have been a good place to be right after because most wars cause a depression afterwards. Or I'm sorry, it's the 1800s. Panic.
Right. We don't use depression. We use panic.
We don't get depressed. We panic.
Yes. Yes. We just run to everywhere. But the thing is again, with that understanding that there are now martial law going on, there are military governors in these districts. You have the Freedmen's Bureau, still a long way into your Southern understanding of life. On top of everything else, you start to see many black, well-educated individuals. Let's make sure that is clear. These educated individuals coming into politics.
Well, only one party, but yes.
Right, you're right. Yes, you're right. Republican politics. My apologies.
Well, because Southern Democrats wouldn't let them in.
Of course not.
And of course, after the Civil War and the Emancipation, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, it would be silly to be in any other party if you were a black man or woman, really, even though the women don't get to vote.
Well, they have a very good influence on party politics.
Yes, they do. And again, the ironic twist of that is these blacks shouldn't have been educated. According to most states' laws,
right?
Their owners shouldn't have been teaching them these things. But there you go. Obviously, not everything was as monolithically antebellum as the South would have you believe.
Of course not.
Every white was genteel in this, and all the blacks were just that. And it's not the case, obviously.
No, of course not.
Not unless they were really good at correspondence courses and were able to move from illiteracy to law degrees in 3 or 4 years. Whew.
Yeah.
So I just thought of this. I wasn't even in the first time we tried this, because it was just one of those things that popped into my mind is, where did all these guys come from? There's a large number of people getting elected to office who, by the law of the South, shouldn't have been able to read and write.
You're right. You're right. And there is a very good story about this. If I remember correctly, it was either before or right as the Civil War was starting. There was a freed black man he had a boat, a little steamboat, that he would travel up and down the Mississippi. And because he was on the boat, he was able to teach younger black folk how to read and write.
Oh.
So again, because he was close to a free state, he was right there along that Missouri-Illinois border, he was able to do such a thing because, well, what state is he really in? Is he in Kansas, or is he in Missouri, or is he in
Well, if you come after him, he can be in Illinois real quick.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, exactly. That's kind of the point. That's kind of the point. But again,
that's cool.
And you got to keep in mind, there are a lot of these free blacks who they go and become college educated.
Yeah.
Now, will they go and be college educated at the University of Virginia or the University of Florida? No. But they may turn and go and become a member of Harvard or Yale or Pennsylvania or any other state,
any other northern state.
Yeah, any university in the north, yeah, for sure. But it helps to shape a whole generation of people.
Yes.
The number of black representatives, the number of black educated individuals, like Booker T. Washington, for instance.
Yeah, it's not like when they take a picture of all the Black Caucus in 1872, I think was the year. Mm-hmm. It's not like a family photo where you only got 5 or 6 people.
No,
it's a lot.
No, you're looking at least about 3 to 4 dozen.
Yeah. I mean, that's significant.
And again, they're serving in deep South states.
Well, yeah.
Mississippi,
South Carolina, which is majority black, Alabama, Mississippi,
right, Louisiana, and again, Louisiana was a different realm in itself because they did have some changes before they have changes long before the Civil War even starts, And
they have a much higher proportion of freed blacks.
Correct. The city of New Orleans was like, well, let's see. It was like New York, or Chicago, during the Great Migration. There were a large number of freed blacks.
Yeah.
In the Deep South.
Well, it was like a Casablanca during World War II.
Right. Yeah.
It was one of those neutral cities. Yeah, it was in the middle of the South, but the rules didn't apply quite as closely as they could have been.
Right.
Which, or maybe Vegas.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Yeah.
In regards to like prostitution.
Yeah.
It was not legal.
Yes, and look, we're going to turn a blind eye to it.
We're not going to look.
Why not?
So a black man goes to New Orleans, gets an education.
Yeah.
At some place like a Tulane.
Right.
They can make themselves better.
Yes.
And then, of course, if they're from, say, Alabama originally, and the war ends, their opportunity to go home, be reunited with family.
Yep.
But now they're an educated black man in a land that there ain't that many educated people.
No.
I mean, most of their relatives are going to be, if they're lucky, they know their letters and numbers. I mean, that's just the way slavery worked.
And you even hear it in many of the style of language that they speak. I mean, their English is not anything we would ever recognize. I mean, yes, we would recognize it, but if you've ever read Huck Finn or
not just read it out loud.
Yes, reading it out loud. Makes
I had
it
to do
even
that
more,
for a class.
I know.
Me too. It was brutal trying to read it wrong.
Right, and that's the thing. Like Jim was not you.
Yes,
but
different Jim.
Different Jim. Jim, the character in the book Huck Finn, he is a slave.
Yes.
And he has very little in terms of correct grammar and enunciation, and his words are not right. Which
they're not put together.
No.
Grammatically it's turned around.
Yeah.
Which is, I think Twain makes a great representation of blacks.
Right.
At this time they're uneducated because it's not legal to educate them in most places.
Exactly. Now, post-Civil War, however, with the Freedmen's Bureau, now you're starting to see hundreds of schools popping up.
Well, there's a demand.
Right.
Huge demand.
Exactly.
I mean, just because you weren't able to learn to read and write doesn't mean you can't see the value.
Exactly.
And that belief that if I can be literate and educated, no one can put me in chains again. That's a goal.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is it reality?
Well, that's the downside of the end of Reconstruction. Right.
Unfortunately, by that 1868 mark, and then by, again, 1870, 1874, we're starting to see a flip.
Well, especially 1869 is the first state comes back in the Union?
Yeah, somewhere around there, yes.
First of the southern states returns to the Union. Mm-hmm. And by 1872, quite a few of them have.
Most every single one, except for maybe your hardened deep southern states,
I'd have to look for sure, but which changes the dynamic of Congress.
Yes.
Now all these bills that weren't passing necessarily by vast majorities anyway, which you would think, but wasn't the case, because Reconstruction, surprisingly enough, was not very popular in the North.
Well, think about it. It's just like any other governmental program. Even today, people get very upset with things such as Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. They think, oh, well, the government's just taking all the money and not doing anything with it. Well, again, many of your conservative groups are saying we need to step back from a lot of these socialized standards and be more proactive with our tax money that we're getting. That's the norm it was back by 71, 72, 73. People are just like, I'm sick and tired of having to pay all these extra taxes, if you will, to go and support someone who I never will see in my life.
Right. Never met, never will meet, don't care to meet.
And again, racism, and we've mentioned this before, racism does not just go away either.
No, the 13th Amendment doesn't do anything to racism. Neither does the 14th or the 15th. It doesn't change how people perceive others.
Well, and heck, even in places like rural Indiana, rural Illinois, and you're a poor dirt farmer from Illinois or Indiana, and you see a black man coming up into your area,
he's a stranger.
And what are you thinking?
Yeah.
You're thinking negative thoughts, or maybe at least.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, if you assume, and you don't have to look very far, if you assume you see someone with red hair and a strange accent show up into your house, as white as can be, and you think of him as a stranger, what's a black man that your cousin Bob went to free and ended up dying, or your brother's Stan there doesn't have a leg because he lost it, at Sharpsburg.
It makes it very difficult for even the Northerners to agree.
Right.
Freeing the slaves, yes, they would love. They wanted, but
because it was there.
It was a moral issue.
Well, it was a very moral issue. It was like a fulfillment of the Declaration of Independence, which people viewed as nearly sacred.
Yeah.
It was viewed as a culmination of Christian value. It had so many things going for it, but again, it took 40 years for the abolition movement to really get ramped up to the point where they elected a president.
Yep.
Because it wasn't in their place. I mean, Pennsylvania had freed the slaves in 1786.
Right.
Most northern states had no slaves by the time most people were aware there was an abolition movement.
True.
So they didn't know, especially if you talk rural areas, which is 60 to 70% of the people especially west of the Appalachians.
Right.
They don't know black people. They've never met one.
No.
Unless they went into Indianapolis, they might have seen some there, but that's about it.
Yep.
Their neighborhood is as lily white as it can be,
and
anybody moving in that doesn't look like them, go to their church, is going to be an other. And we talked a lot earlier in our series on slavery about the other. And blacks, unfortunately, no matter what the law says, were seen in so many of these communities as other. Even if those same people would say they deserve to be free, they deserve to have the chance to vote, just not here.
Yeah, exactly.
Just not here.
Exactly. And so what we find by, again, 74 with the resentment in the North, the major changes in the South with your increasing reunification of the Southern states into the Union, you see a large imbalance now. You literally flip the script from whites being on the bottom in your representation to now whites controlling
Moving
representation
in the South. Yes.
Yes, in the South.
Well, and Reconstruction is one of those programs that nobody's happy with.
No.
Democrats in the North don't like it because it's too expensive.
Right.
It's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Radical Republicans hate it because it's not doing enough.
Right.
It's not fixing the problems that they fought so hard to get rid of. And so nobody's happy.
No.
And so as all those southern states come in, and suddenly we have a toss-up election.
Yep. You have Rutherford B. Hayes for the Republicans in the 76th presidential election going up against, what is his name?
Tilden?
Samuel Tilden.
Yeah.
Exactly. Samuel Tilden from the state of New York.
Yes. So very much a northern Democrat.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And of course, Rutherford B. Hayes, he's from Ohio.
A good state if you're following Grant.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, Hayes is a former Union soldier. One of the last of the Union soldiers as presidents. I believe the last was James Garfield, but
I thought McKinley served too, but I don't know in what capacity.
Oh, yes, he did. You're right, he did.
But,
he was.
I mean, that wasn't as big of an issue then.
No,
by that point, 40 years later.
You're right. But we see now Tilden v. Hayes. Again, 1876, the centennial year.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. You're right.
We have this massive movement again to go back to the way things used to be before the Civil War in the South.
Bring our boys home.
Exactly. They again have been away in some cases for almost 10 years at the most?
Well, at this point, yeah, it's been 12 years or 11 years since the end of the war.
And
and what happens in July of 1876? I never put these things together though. General Custer stumbles into a bad place.
Oh my gosh!
And so the Army's going to want to be moving these troops out of the South and go fight a real threat.
I didn't even realize about the Indian Wars. Oh my gosh!
You know, this is,
and that's the thing.
All of a sudden, you need a punitive expedition. Where are you going to get those troops?
You're getting them from the South.
Come here, guys. You don't need to be in Louisiana.
And so you'll see here by the election of '76, we see now this stalemate. Mm-hmm. We see a stalemate in both the popular vote and in the Electoral College, where we have a tie. And what people may not understand is when you have a tie in the Electoral College, it goes to the House of Representatives.
Mm-hmm. Only did it happen twice.
Yeah. It happened in Jefferson in the election of 1800, and then this one in 1876. So we see here nobody wants to vote wrong. Nobody wants to do this. So we finally now come up with this compromise, and we call it, of course, historians love to name things bluntly. We call it the Compromise of 1877.
Yep.
Which gives...
Because the election was in 1876,
yes.
But the House doesn't take its seat until January of 1877.
Right. And so you have this committee coming together, and you have a 15-person committee, and they finally decide, okay, we're going to vote for Hayes, which many of your Democrats will call him rather Fraud B. Hayes, because he was fraudulently brought into the presidency. But
yes.
Here again is the compromise. The South says, we will allow and agree to make Hayes the president if you get rid of your soldiers from the South and allow the Southern state representatives to take control back of their home states. That seems to be an all right thing unless you're, again, a black person.
If you're a black person
in the
South, because you've just had 10 years of more than you probably ever hoped for.
Oh my gosh.
If you were talking about 1855, you would have never dreamed that you would own your own land,
or
go to school, or your kids would be going to school,
or have the chance to vote.
Well, not only vote, but maybe your cousin, or maybe you, are sitting in the United States Capitol building.
Oh my gosh, it's an amazing turning point. But unfortunately, by '77, it all goes well.
The hope of 1865 turned sour really fast.
Right. By '77, you see really no black representative in the state or national level.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, a couple of the senators hang on because they have 6-year terms.
Yes, but by the time they're done, they're done.
I can't even imagine how many of those representatives, House of Representatives, those blacks,
right,
probably couldn't even vote in their last election because of the law changes at the state level.
Well, and of course you have now literacy tests. You have poll taxes. You have grandfather clauses.
The KKK.
Yes, of course.
The second version.
Yes.
First version got stomped.
Yes. We see a massive rounding up of KKK members because of that military presence in the South after the war, just destroying the resentment of the KKK towards blacks. And, well, again, when you move all of those protective people out, power vacuums happen, and the KKK comes back in, and they come back with a vengeance. And you see quite a bit of black men, women, and even some whites.
Well, especially if they were northern. Friendly.
Yes. They're
or scallywags or carpetbaggers.
Yeah. Let's just put it this way: they're very ripe fruit for the picking.
Well, I mean, if you're living in southern Mississippi and you're a northerner who came down there and got elected because nobody else could run,
right?
You're probably not going to be very popular, no matter how good you were at your job.
No.
And if you were kindly to blacks, you're done.
Yeah,
you're done.
There's no way.
And it's just it's one of those heartbreaking. Really, it's just all it is. It's heartbreaking episodes in American history where that promise of a new republic, reconstituted with equality between whites and blacks, not equity by any means, not economic equality by any means, even if, well, we'll talk briefly, shortly about like Sherman's plan of 40 acres and a mule. Even in that case, there wouldn't have been true, equality economically, but blacks really, honestly, for the next 100 years, fight just for that right to vote.
Right.
To be taken seriously as a citizen.
Yep.
And, you know, that promise in the spring of 1865 was huge. And the fall of 1876 and, you know, winter of 1877 just tear it apart.
Yep.
It's gone. And like he said, within 6 years of the max, there are no blacks left in Congress.
Right.
A lot of those schools are closed.
Right.
Burned.
Right.
A lot of those people have fled to the north. And, you know, it's at this time the Great Migration kicks off. People, blacks who had that hope, that dream, even if their dream was just to own their own land and farm and raise their kids, that dream may have been taken away.
Yeah.
Especially if their land happened to be some white plantation owner's land.
So you move.
So you move because there's just nothing else to do. Not to mention, of course, the second wave of industrialization is happening in the north, and they need people in factories, and they don't care what color you are.
Oh, yeah.
They don't care.
So let's take a look just real quick about what if?
Yes, alternate history, or as technical people like to call it, counter-factuals, if you want to be fancy. Basically, what happens if something changes in history, like we talked about with Lincoln?
Right.
You know, if Lincoln's plan of leniency, 10% plan goes, it's my personal belief, we probably would have had another Civil War by the 1900s, early 1900s. Because the South, as we see from our own history, did not take losing very well.
It's just like anything else. I mean, not to go down a rabbit hole, but it's very similar to what happened after 1919 with the Treaty of Versailles, and then what, another 20
years, you've got another world war.
You've got a world war on your hands, and who's now the front runner? It's Germany. Germany is the one that got destroyed with the Treaty of Versailles, and they're the ones that start World War II. We would have had the same situation. The South got destroyed with a lot of the war. Of course, the negative aspects of war, like any other war.
Mm-hmm. But then the after war was even worse as far as they're concerned.
Yes.
Their economic position as plantation owners was destroyed.
Yeah.
Their social position, if you're a poor white person,
you're really the same as a black man.
Yeah, and that was the one thing you had going for you in 1860 was the fact that no matter how dirt poor you were, at least you weren't black.
Exactly.
I mean, it sounds awful, but it really literally was. There was that that caste system.
Yeah.
As long as you weren't on the bottom, everything's better.
Yeah.
So, you know, I have a hard time imagining that the South wouldn't have tried it again.
Right.
Maybe a little smarter. Yeah. Maybe waited like the Irish did for World War I to kick off.
That could be a good idea.
You know, wait until the federal government's distracted by things in Europe, and then maybe try it then.
Boom. It could have been. I mean, those of course are what ifs.
Right. That's a what if on the far side. Right. Lincoln's plan is probably the most lenient, most graceful.
Yes.
And the plan that happened was this weird
menagerie.
Frankenstein version of a Southern Democrat versus radical Republicans in the government trying to make it work.
Right.
On the far side, we could look at what happens if
John Wilkes Booth's conspiracy goes through.
What if it works? What if Johnson and Seward are both dead that next April morning, and the top of the federal government has been decapitated?
Yeah.
And shortly thereafter, a man named Schuyler Colfax would be sworn into office. He was the Speaker of the House.
It would have been.
He was a wildly radical Republican.
Right.
Got started in the Know Nothing Party, which really only had one platform, end slavery.
Yep.
Especially in the Western territories. But ending slavery was, you know, one of their, well, really their only issue.
Yeah.
And now he's the President of the United States, and he's the President of the United States who is in a position to exact revenge. There is no Southern Democrat in the White House now to stop the radical Republicans from going to town.
Right.
Which means we talk about Sherman literally taking the land from plantation owners and divvying it out at 40 acres and a mule for every black family. And the white family can sit on their 40 acres surrounded, you know, oh, look, it's Tara.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah, I mean, it's
but your turnaround area takes up most of your acreage.
Right. And again, that's the thing, like, your redistribution of land, the way the radicals were depicting it, would ultimately, I think, would be a negative in a way, because now you're forcing people who have never farmed on their own.
Well, very possibly, yes. You have your house servants and your city slaves.
Yeah.
You know, the ones that worked at blacksmith shops or whatever.
Right.
They don't know how to grow
They
anything.
don't know what they're doing.
And they don't want to grow anything.
And I don't think they would take it either.
And again, would that be one of those circumstances where you got your deed to your 40 acres and you turned around and went to the marketplace and you sold your 40 acres to probably some sort of speculator, because that's how governments work. And then they would sell it to black farmers who now maybe have 50 acres or 48 acres or 80 acres if they did well.
And now you might be more important than your white neighbor.
Well, almost guaranteed you'd be more important than your white neighbor, because nobody has any real land is going to have any land.
Right.
That's white.
That's true.
Because especially in like South Carolina, where the whites made up, 28 to 30% of the population and owned 100% of the land?
Yep.
Now they're going to own probably 10% of the land.
Yeah.
And the blacks going to own the other 90%. Yeah, you're getting demoted pretty quickly in that social hierarchy. And it does, I think, in a lot of ways, it would probably be long-term for the South disadvantageous, in the sense that it makes them almost permanently an agricultural basic. Because there's never going to be a real pull to industrialize.
No, there's not.
Not as big a pull as the North. I mean, it would happen.
Yes, eventually it would happen.
But it wouldn't be this huge impetus, because there'd be all this time absorbing this farmland and making it more profitable. And these families would be happy with it.
Yes.
I mean, if I've been a slave for 20 years and I have my kids on a farm and I get to raise and sell my own crops,
I'm taking it.
I'm not really going to buck that system.
Oh, no.
I'm happier than I could have ever imagined I could be. I'm a free man. I can vote for who I want to. I can sell my crops. I can go to town whenever I want to.
Right.
My congressman looks like me.
Yeah.
And these are things that a black in the South before the war could have never imagined. You know, but advantage-wise, you know, for America, I think it does a lot. We may have a great migration starting in 1866. We see the same migration from Louisiana.
That's true.
They moved to Canada.
That's true.
The French moved from Canada. We see it in the Revolutionary War with a lot of the Tories moving to Canada or South Africa.
That's a good point.
We could see a white migration, especially out of those deep South.
And I think that's where you find a large number of your whites, maybe not from, like we see right around the time of the end of the Civil War, moving into those western areas like Kansas and Nebraska and the Dakotas and other places along the Great Plains. Maybe it's not your your northern families who are trying to find places to live. Maybe it's your southern families
pushing the wagons westward,
because they don't have any land of their own.
They've got cash, they've got valuables that they can take in a wagon and get the heck out of Dodge.
And you see,
I guess going to Dodge.
Go to Dodge, right? Going to Dodge, but again, you see a shift, a complete shift of them. And do you have then major advances for the blacks and say maybe the cattle drives?
Well, yeah, I mean, you already have a large number of black cowboys.
Right.
They're not talked about. You don't get to see them in too many movies.
No.
And the few movies that bother to feature them go weird. But, you know...
Lonesome Dove did a good job, though.
What was it, the 9th and 10th Cavalry?
Yes, the Buffalo Soldiers. Yeah.
I mean,
they were around up until almost World War I.
But now, if you think about it, if you go all the way to World War I, World War I's the first war where we even have a unit, the All-Americans.
Right.
Most units are done by the National Guard.
Mm-hmm.
You come from your state. Well, that means the Army has to desegregate much earlier, probably 50 years earlier at the latest.
Had to be. And of course, again, the Navy is well on its way to being desegregated before the Army.
Yes, because you're in closer
quarters.
You're closer quarters, so you don't get the option of putting them in separate units.
Yeah.
You don't have an all-black destroyer.
Right. It just costs too much.
That's not going to happen. Too much. But with that many congressmen, that many senators, you're going to get your appropriations held up if you resist So I'm thinking you definitely see you would see at least black units in the Army. Well, you saw those in the Civil War. That would continue, but I think probably within a generation, you're seeing black officers.
Right, and you're seeing integrated units. You're seeing racially integrated units.
Especially in the West,
yes,
you're fighting.
Right. Well, I mean, again, the Buffalo Soldiers did fight against the Sioux. They fought against the Cheyenne out west, but again, they're segregated units with white officers. So we won't see a black Jack Pershing.
No, he would just be Jack.
Yeah.
You know, he'd be Jack.
Yeah, he would invent the jumping jack. Thank you, John J. Pershing of Marceline, Missouri. But the idea again is this: you don't have those famous figures.
Well, instead, what do you have? Is Custer in charge of a mixed unit?
Yeah.
I mean, he had 3 companies with him.
That's true.
Or 3 battalions. One of them could easily have been black.
Sure.
And again, by 1876, I wouldn't see you having desegregated units probably, but I would
at least by 1900.
And if nothing else, assume because America is sometimes very slow at these things. Yep. World War I would have ended that. There would have been mixed units. There wouldn't have been any time to play around with that game. You would have served who we put you next to, and like it or not, you're in the Army now.
So you don't see like the Harlem Hellfighters, or you don't see any of
these. You might still.
You might,
because they were they could have become a National Guard militia.
Right, that's true.
That would have possibly went together.
That's a good point.
No white officers.
No.
Would have been black officers.
Yeah.
I mean, there might have been white officers as they start to desegregate.
Sure.
So what if the Harlem Hellfighters was a mixed unit?
Wouldn't that have been something?
I mean,
it could have been. It could have been Irish, German. No, maybe not German, but Irish and Scots and Italian and
Polish,
blacks. And everyone. It could have been everybody.
It could have been a wild mishmash of ethnic groups all going to fight Kaiser.
Yeah.
On the downside for the Radical Republican plan, there are a lot of people that got forts named after them.
That's true.
Who probably would have ended up hanging from trees.
Yep.
I think the Radical Republicans would have cleaned house. Well, anybody that would have been in the Confederate Congress would have become considered a traitor and treated accordingly, hang from the tree until dead.
Yep.
I think probably almost anybody that had stars on their shoulders in the CSA, Hood, Bragg, Lee,
anyone,
they would have all probably been hung as traitors, and officers probably would have been barred for life.
Oh, for sure.
From serving in any capacity in the government.
Yep.
State or federal. It would have been harsh.
And that's the point.
And it might have taken 50... Well, I guess in certain states, Arkansas, Texas, states that weren't majority black.
True.
Tennessee even.
Yeah.
It might have taken longer for them to come back into the Union, as opposed to a South Carolina, who would have had a black congressional delegation almost immediately.
Yes.
Especially if our theory of a white migration instead of a black migration occurs. But when we look at our race relations today, or even for the last 50 years, the Civil Rights Act isn't even a necessity by that point.
No.
Because there are no states with Jim Crow laws.
And there you go. Do we have people such as Booker T. Washington?
I mean, obviously he exists.
Yes, he exists, but would he be as a provocative and revival leader of black people? Cast down your buckets where you are and do what you can now economically.
Would there be a Tuskegee Institute?
Right, they've been doing that for so many years. Had the Radical Republicans been in office much earlier,
I mean, but would there have been a need for a Grambling State or Tuskegee if blacks were allowed into the University of Georgia immediately,
or Ole Miss, or any number of those major state universities down south? I don't foresee so.
No, I think it would have changed the demographics of the South, well, beyond our understanding.
Of course.
Really.
Yes.
I mean, I think you would see the mixed states would probably stay mixed states.
Sure.
But the heavily black states probably would have become more heavily as you saw plantation owners and whites move out. And, of course, with the backing of a friendly military government, revenge by blacks against white overseers who are cruel, and things like that.
Yeah.
The hangings might have gone the other direction.
Right.
So it would have been a different world, but it's hard to look at it from today's perspective.
Yeah.
Would it have been worse? Yes, the first decade or so would have been worse.
Sure.
Probably all around, economically, socially, just violence-wise. But at the end of it, would we have ended up with a country that was, I guess, geographically probably more segregated than today, because you wouldn't have you wouldn't have Harlem.
Right.
In the way we understand Harlem.
You wouldn't have Southside Chicago.
Right. They wouldn't look the same at all.
No. East St. Louis.
Because
any of those.
There wouldn't have been any need for them.
Right.
It's an amazing thing. But the reason we bring up this counterfactual, besides the fact that it's fun to talk about.
Right, of course.
The what ifs, is these what ifs highlight how badly Reconstruction failed.
Right.
In doing as much as it was supposed to. It just never really got to the point of preparing blacks to keep their position in society.
Yes, you're right.
It's amazing to me how quickly the coup, effectively, but it was done by democratic means, maybe underhanded, but still mostly democratic means. I mean, how does a white get elected to the House in South Carolina without some blacks voting for them? It doesn't mean they don't lie their butts off.
Right.
That's a possibility.
And then, of course, you're having those grandfather clauses and the literacy tests and poll taxes, everything. There are underhanded means, but again,
and they're done so fast.
Yes.
I mean, within 5 years, basically blacks are completely disenfranchised in the South.
Right.
Just it's mind-boggling how quickly from 1877 to 1885, just to pick a date.
Right.
That it went from hope springs eternal to not this again. I mean, now you're a sheriff. Okay, and because we didn't solve the land issue, we didn't make a way for the blacks to be economically viable on their own.
You now have sharecroppers,
right? Yeah. Which meant the Freedmen's Bureau never quite lived up to what the goal was.
Right.
There should have been enough empty land with all the deaths in the South, but didn't happen that way.
Unfortunately,
unfortunately, so we go from I think an almost guaranteed another war.
Yeah.
From Lincoln's plan.
Right.
With all the recumbent Jim Crow, maybe even a return to slavery. Although that wouldn't have been very popular with the South's European friends, so they might have just made it slavery by another name.
Which unfortunately is
the
case.
Which we see in Europe. They came up with all sorts of ideas. You know, you weren't a serf, but you still couldn't go anywhere. Right. So I mean, we can't ever fault human ingenuity for oppressing his fellow man. So, on that one hand, you see that horrible, maybe generational war in between the North and the South. Well, the North. Or the South and the North and the West. Right. Because, I mean, the North is going to keep expanding regardless what happens otherwise.
Exactly. They will gobble up that Midwest and Western states.
Oh, yeah.
Inevitably.
Now, with a South that's a lot more inimical to the Northern viewpoint, maybe that slows down. We don't see Arizona become a state until after World War I.
Yeah, maybe.
Or maybe it happens sooner, so we can get more votes in Congress.
It's hard to tell. And again, that is what the alternate history aspect does bring about.
It allows us to highlight the failures of Reconstruction, the failure of the promise, and just how bad. I mean, I grew up hearing about Jim Crow laws and things in the South, and you know they're bad, but you don't live with them. Well, my parents both lived in Kansas and Pennsylvania. They never understood it all because they didn't live with separate bathrooms or separate drinking fountains. That wasn't a thing. My dad went to a segregated desegregated high school. It wasn't an issue for them, but it was still going on because my dad graduated from high school in 1962.
Right. I mean,
or three.
Well, even with. Even with Brown v. Board, 1954. Yeah. And I know we're kind of starting to go down that rabbit hole, but even with Brown v. Board in 1954, the second case, Brown 2, the Supreme Court says, with all due speed. Doesn't say you got to do it before this deadline. It says we're going to let the states decide
how fast
they want to go, which of course is why Alabama,
which is why you have paratroopers in Little Rock.
Right, the Little Rock 9, 1957.
Yeah.
You have you have the governor of Alabama standing in front of, thank you, Forrest Gump, for giving me that.
Yeah, that's right.
But you have the governor of Alabama standing in front of the University of Alabama saying, we will not allow this. And then, of course, Kennedy, was it Kennedy? Yeah, it was Kennedy, bringing in those troops to say, no.
Oh, it was Eisenhower, I think.
Was it Eisenhower still?
Eisenhower was all the way up till,
61.
61, so.
Yeah, it could have been. But again.
But it kept going. I mean, it didn't stop.
It was something that was continuous in the Deep South. You don't see a real shift until by 1964, 1965, 1968, do you see the next wave of this civil rights
really coming to fruition. I mean, it started after World War II.
Sure.
A lot of returning veterans.
Yes.
I can't remember the man's name. He got a Silver Star, came home, was lynched within like a week of coming home.
Unbelievable.
A proudly serving veteran was lynched because of the color of his skin. And that is the kind of thing that motivated people from the North to go to the South.
Right.
And protest how they treated blacks. Because, again, we just had this huge unifying war.
Right.
Can't say the Depression unified us.
No.
But the war definitely did. It mixed 20 million men and women into the armed forces from all over the United States, because World War II is the first war we don't really care where you're from.
Right. It doesn't matter.
It's the Army decides what unit you go to.
Exactly.
With the exception of the National Guard regiments, like the one from Virginia that got wiped out at Omaha Beach.
Well, I mean,
then
again, you have people who are from, say, Montana fighting in the same unit as a person from Brooklyn.
Right,
I mean,
and a guy from Florida right next to him.
Right, yeah, you're like, really? You're from where? There's
language barrier there.
You're from Butte? What the hell?
What's butt? But exactly.
Exactly. Yes.
So on the one hand, we have this possibly almost never-ending cycle of warfare on the continent, probably ending in either the North just finally saying "go your own way," or the South just becomes occupied territory for 50, 60 years.
And eventually
then becomes states again.
Right.
As people get resettled, basically. And almost an ethnic cleansing, if you will.
Oh, yes.
That's like a horrible nightmare, and definitely not what Lincoln would have been hoping to do.
Not.
And instead, we have 100 years of degradation and disenfranchisement and all those things. And then on the far side of that, maybe a much more brutal Reconstruction, but an America that we would look at today and say, wow, race problems. What are those?
Right.
I mean, they'd still exist.
Of course, it's just inevitable.
Anytime people are different, people find a reason to dislike them or treat them poorly, or just to shut them out of job opportunities, churches, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's the downside of being human.
Unfortunately,
we are built to be those hunter-gatherers. We haven't really shed those roots very well.
Yeah.
That anybody we consider us, we like. Anybody we consider other, we might tolerate.
Yeah,
maybe.
but really,
but if there's anything
encroaching
going on
in my land,
when do these things always go bad?
Right.
The economy takes a downturn.
Yep.
Suddenly you have one of the most liberal democracies in Europe becomes Nazi Germany.
Yep.
Because they can blame it on another.
Well,
or several others.
Just like what happened in the United States around that time. 1919 through roughly 1923. No, sorry, 1929. 1930, you have a laissez-faire style government. Boom, Depression hits 1929. What do we see in the next election, 32? I hate to say it, but a very socialist style Democrat running our nation for almost 12 years.
Well, more than that, because I mean, you can't really say Truman's administration changed a lot.
That's
but
true.
FDR did.
That's true. So I mean, you have
so from 32 to 52.
Yeah, for 20 years.
20 years, you basically have one administration,
one style
of
And
administration.
again, it's very much the polar opposite of what we had
in the 20s. Well, it's the polar opposite of what we get in Eisenhower.
Exactly.
Eisenhower's the last laissez-faire president.
Exactly. By then, all hell breaks loose. Seriously. But again, that's a story for another day.
I think this will probably wrap up our trip through the story of slavery, even though we've gone all the way to the present day almost.
Right.
So I think we're going to look at moving into maybe the Great War.
Not
the first one.
No.
The really Great War.
The really great one that we love to talk about.
It starts with the Great War.
Yeah.
But then it becomes the Second War.
Yeah.
To end
there
all
you go.
wars.
Right.
And so we're going to start with that next time. That might be a little while, but
yes, but we'll get there.
You know, because
we'll
now
get there.
It's amazing as it thinks. I'm already thinking we're kind of up and on holidays.
I know
and things. So, but we will try to get these out every couple of weeks, just so you know that they're coming. Remember, if you haven't already, subscribe. If you know people that would just be interested in listening to people babble about history for an hour or so,
hit that share button.
Hit that share button. Tell somebody. We're not making any money on this. We're just sharing what we love. But we would love to see comments.
Yeah.
You know, not too harsh a criticism. We'll feel bad. But
I might shed a tear.
And because we know enough about history, it doesn't matter how long we took, we'd miss something.
Right. Yes.
Always do.
Right.
Always do. That never fails me when you tell somebody you have a degree in history. They always have some history anecdote that you've never heard of.
Right.
And they're like, do you really know history if you don't know that? Yes, actually,
yeah,
I can.
I do. It's just I don't know every single piece of history, but...
Right. The conspiracy to kill Lincoln. I just thought it was John Wilkes Booth for most of my life.
Right.
Until probably I was in my 30s.
And then you get to learning more.
Yeah.
So...
Then all of a sudden you hear this, and my opinion of Reconstruction changed dramatically.
Exactly.
Because now it looks much worse. It's not just one crazy guy. It's a conspiracy of people.
Yes.
That would have been hard not to tie it back to the CSA.
Right.
So, but that's it for this run of 6.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed something about them. Yeah, we keep changing our background. See my nice
wonderful
my
pieces
wall of weaponry here.
Of weaponry here.
So we go from the Crusades to
modern day.
Modern day. So Baghdad to Baghdad.
Yeah. There you go.
Anyway, we hope you tune in, share, subscribe. Let us know. Don't be shy about just making a comment. You know, if you liked it, if you thought we just needed to shut up sometimes, which is probably true.
That's true. Yeah.
Let us know, because we're learning this. Like, you know, I had to get up and leave because we don't know how to splice two things together to make a video. We can't pause in the middle.
Right.
We're not quite to the continuity guy's level yet, because, well, he's a producer, I'm a producer.
And
and stars, too.
Yeah.
So, I hope you have a great time. I hope you enjoyed this, because I know, for me and so many people I've talked to, high school history didn't do too much for us. No. I mean, it did for me. It motivated me to become a history teacher, but most of my classmates didn't. But then I talked to a lot of those classmates at a reunion 30 years later who watches the History Channel and, you know, Military Channel and all this stuff, because suddenly it's interesting again, because, you know, especially once you have kids, you start feeling connected to history in a way you never were before. You're no longer the cutting edge of history.
No, you're making it.
You're making it, you're living it, and, you know, there it is. So, good to be with you.